6. Sumedha's reflection on the perfections. The Bodhisatta, Sumedha, was delighted with both the prophetic words of the Bodhisatta and the encouraging words of Devas and Brahmas, and he reflected thus, when Devas and Brahmas had departed, BV 2.109-115. Buddhas are not speakers of ambiguous words, nor are they given to speaking of futile things. Never have their words proved wrong. Surely I will become a Buddha. As a stone thrown upwards will certainly fall back to the ground, so the words of Buddhas always prove unerring and never failing. Surely I will become a Buddha. Again, as death certainly comes to living beings, so the words of Buddhas always prove unerring and never failing. Surely I will become a Buddha. Again, as the sun certainly rises at the end of night, so the words of Buddhas always prove unerring and never failing. Surely I will become a Buddha. Again, as a lion certainly roars on coming out of his den, so the words of Buddhas always prove unerring and never failing. Surely I will become a Buddha. Again, as birth certainly follows conception in a woman, the words of Buddhas always prove unerring and never failing. Surely I will become a Buddha. Reflecting on these similes, Sumedha was certain that he would definitely attain Buddhahood in accordance with Bodhisatta's prophetic words. And he thought to himself thus, BV 2.116. Well, I will make a thorough search in the basic principle concerning the three worlds in all the 10 directions for the conditions of my becoming a Buddha. Thus he thought about and investigated those factors which conditioned his becoming a Buddha, Buddha Karakadama. 1. The perfection of generosity. While Sumedha was engaged in the investigation of the Buddha-making factors, he discovered first the perfection of generosity, which former bodhisattas had always followed and practiced, and which was like a highway to the state of Buddhahood. Then he admonished himself thus, BV 118. Sumedha, if you are desirous of attaining the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience, you should constantly establish first the perfection of generosity and make efforts to become accomplished in fulfilling this perfection. He continued to admonish himself thus, BV 119-120. When a jar, full with liquid, is overturned, it pours out all its contents. Likewise, Sumedha, you should give alms to all, whether low, middling, or high, leaving nothing with you. 2. The perfection of morality. After discovering and reflecting on the perfection of generosity, he went on to contemplate thus, BV 121. The perfection of generosity alone cannot constitute all the Buddha-making factors. There must be other factors that also contribute to the maturity of the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience. I shall investigate them. When he investigated thus, he discovered morality as the second perfection which former bodhisattas had always cultivated and fulfilled. He admonished himself thus, BV 122. Sumedha, if you are desirous of attaining the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience, you should constantly establish the perfection of morality and make efforts to become accomplished in fulfilling this perfection. He continued to admonish himself, BV 124-125. The yak, Kamara, protects its tail even at the risk of its life. If the tail should happen to be caught in something, it would rather die than damage its tail by making an effort to release it. Likewise, Sumedha, you should observe morality in the 4 purifying fields, namely, 1. Restraint according to the monastic rules, Padamaka Savara. 2. Restraint of the sense faculties, Indriya Savara. 3. Purity of livelihood, Ajiva Parasati. And 4. Proper use of the requisites, Pakaya Sanasita, which form the basis of meritorious deeds. As the yak gives up its life in protecting its tail, so also you should safeguard your morality constantly. 3. The perfection of renunciation. After discovering and reflecting on the perfection of morality, he discovered renunciation as the third perfection which former bodhisattas had always cultivated and fulfilled. 43. Then he admonished himself thus. BV 127-128. Sumedha, if you are desirous of attaining the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience, you should constantly establish the perfection of renunciation and make efforts to become accomplished in fulfilling this perfection. He continued to admonish himself. BV 129-130. A man, imprisoned for a long time and suffering from torture all the time, looks only for an opportunity to escape. Likewise, Sumedha, you should regard all the existences in the realms of sensuality, materiality, and immateriality as prisons and look towards renunciation to escape from all these existences. 4. The perfection of wisdom. After discovering and reflecting on the perfection of renunciation, he discovered wisdom as the fourth perfection which former Bodhisattas had always cultivated and fulfilled. Then he admonished himself thus. BV 132-133. Sumedha, if you are desirous of attaining the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience, you should constantly establish the perfection of wisdom and make efforts to become accomplished in fulfilling this perfection. He continued to admonish himself. BV 134-135. A monastic on his alms round receives sufficient food by going from one household to another, be they low, middling, or high. Likewise, Sumedha, you should always approach all learned persons, irrespective of their depth of learning, and ask them the facts and the meaning of all that should be known by raising questions, such as, Sir, what is merit? What is demerit? What is faulty? What is faultless? And so on. You should thus make an effort to become accomplished in the perfection of wisdom. When you are thus accomplished, you will attain the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience. 5. The perfection of energy. After discovering and reflecting on the perfection of wisdom, he discovered energy as the fifth perfection which former Bodhisattas cultivated and fulfilled. Then he admonished himself thus. BV 137-138. Sumedha, if you are desirous of attaining the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience, you should constantly establish the perfection of energy and make efforts to become accomplished in fulfilling this perfection. He continued to admonish himself. BV 139-140. Crouching, standing, and walking, the lion, the king of beasts, is possessed of undiminished energy in these postures and is always alert. Likewise, Sumedha, you should constantly arouse your energy in all your existences. When you are accomplished in fulfilling the perfection of energy, you will attain the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience. 6. The perfection of forbearance. After discovering and reflecting on the perfection of energy, he discovered forbearance as the sixth perfection which former Bodhisattas had always cultivated and fulfilled. 44. Then he admonished himself thus. BV 142-143. Sumedha, if you are desirous of attaining the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience, you should constantly establish the perfection of forbearance without being inconsistent, such as being tolerant sometimes and not at other times, being patient with some people and not with others. If you can practice thus, you will attain the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience. He continued to admonish himself. BV 144-145. This great earth shows no signs of love or hate towards all of the things that are dumped upon it, but forbears them whether they are clean and good or unclean and foul. Likewise, Sumedha, you should put up with all that is done to you, be it in honor or in contempt. When you are accomplished in fulfilling the perfection of forbearance, you will attain the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience. 7. The perfection of truthfulness. After discovering and reflecting on the perfection of forbearance, he discovered truthfulness as the seventh perfection which former Bodhisattas had always followed and practiced. Then he admonished himself thus. BV 147, 148. Sumedha, if you are desirous of attaining the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience, you should constantly establish the perfection of truthfulness, which is speaking only the truth and not being duplicitous, such as being truthful sometimes and not at other times, speaking truthfully to some people and not to others. If you fulfill the perfection of truthfulness by speaking only the truth, you will attain the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience. He continued to admonish himself. BV 149, 150. The morning star, which serves as a guiding light, keeps steady on its course, never deviating from it, irrespective of the season, whether it is rainy, cold, or hot. Likewise, Sumedha, you should not deviate from the path of truth, the path that consists of 8 sectors. What you see, what you hear, what you feel, what you know, what you do not see, what you do not hear, what you do not feel, and what you do not know. When you are accomplished in fulfilling the perfection of truthfulness, you will attain the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience. 8. The perfection of resolution. After discovering and reflecting on the perfection of truthfulness, he discovered resolution as the 8th perfection which former bodhisattas had always cultivated and fulfilled. Then he admonished himself. BV 152, 153. Sumedha, if you are desirous of attaining the paths, fruitions, and omniscience, you should constantly establish the perfection of resolution. When you fulfill it steadfastly without wavering, you will attain the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience. He continued to admonish himself. BV 154, 155. A big rocky mountain that stands in a solid mass is 45, not shaken by strong winds, but remains rooted in its place. Likewise, Sumedha, you should perform without fail and at all times meritorious deeds which you have resolved to do. When you are accomplished in fulfilling the perfection of resolution, you will attain the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience. 9. The perfection of loving kindness. After discovering and reflecting on the perfection of resolution, he discovered loving kindness as the 9th perfection which former bodhisattas had always cultivated and fulfilled. Then he admonished himself. BV 157, 158. Sumedha, if you are desirous of attaining the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience, you should constantly establish the perfection of loving kindness and make efforts to cultivate and practice the meditation of loving kindness, metabhavana, in a peerless manner. He continued to admonish himself. BV 159, 160. Water suffuses with coolness all who bathe, the virtuous and the wicked alike, and cleanses them of dust and dirt. Likewise, Sumedha, you should develop goodwill equally towards those who wish for your welfare and those who do not. When you are accomplished in fulfilling the perfection of loving kindness, you will attain knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience. 10. The perfection of equanimity. After discovering and reflecting on the perfection of loving kindness, he went on to contemplate thus. BV 161. These 9 alone cannot constitute the Buddha-making factors. There must be other perfections that also contribute to the maturity of the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience. I shall investigate them. When he investigated thus, he discovered equanimity as the 10th perfection which former bodhisattas had always cultivated and fulfilled. Then he admonished himself. BV 162, 163. Sumedha, a pair of scales remains steady without tipping to one side or the other when poised by equal weights. Likewise, if you remain evenly balanced in mind when faced with happiness or suffering, you will attain the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience. He continued to admonish himself. BV 164, 165. Sumedha, this great earth shows no sign of love, or 46, hate towards all the things that are dumped upon it, whether they are clean or foul. Likewise, Sumedha, you should always remain composed, equable in heart, not being affected either by love or hate. When you are accomplished in fulfilling the perfection of equanimity, you will attain the path and fruition and omniscience. When Sumedha had reflected on the perfection of equanimity, it occurred to him thus, PTS 113, the perfections which contribute to the maturity of the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience, and make a Buddha, and which a Bodhisatta has to fulfill, are exactly these 10. There are no other perfections besides these. And these 10 perfections, which are essential to become a Buddha, do not exist outside myself, neither in the sky above nor on the earth below, nor do they lie in the east or in any other direction. In fact, they are in my heart. When he had thought thus, he urged himself, BVA PTS 113, Sumedha, fulfill these 10 perfections, which are the excellent factors conditioning Buddhahood, without swerving in any way. Then he considered going over the perfections in forward order: generosity, morality, renunciation, wisdom, energy, forbearance, truthfulness, resolution, loving kindness, and equanimity. Then he considered them in reverse order: equanimity, loving kindness, resolution, truthfulness, forbearance, energy, wisdom, renunciation, morality, and generosity. Then he considered going over them in groups of 2, beginning with the middle 2: energy and forbearance, wisdom and truthfulness, renunciation and resolution, morality and loving kindness, generosity and equanimity. Then he considered going over them again, beginning from the 2 ends: generosity and equanimity, morality and loving kindness, renunciation and resolution, wisdom and truthfulness, energy and forbearance. Thus he contemplated on the 10 perfections as thoroughly as an oil press grinds oil seeds to produce oil. He also considered all the matters connected with the perfections that are essential for his becoming a Buddha. Giving up external things is an exercise of an ordinary perfection, parami. Giving up one's limb is an exercise of higher perfection, upaparami. Giving up one's life is an exercise of the highest perfection, paramatha parami. A great earthquake. Because of the power generated by the investigation of the 10 perfections complete with their basic principles of functions and characteristics, this great earth leaned left and right, forward and backward, downward and upward. In these ways it shook violently. It also made loud rumbling and echoing sounds, like a sugarcane press operated by its workers, or like the turning wheel of an oil mill. The 10,000 world elements swirled and quaked. After declaring the prophecy to Sumedha, Bodhisatta entered the city of Ramavati and went to the citizens who had invited him to a meal. It was while he was partaking of the meal that Sumedha reflected on the 10 perfections, one after another. And it was at the end of his reflection that the earthquake took place. Because of this violent earthquake, all the people who were hosts to the Buddha could not stand firm. Like the big solid trees lashed by the strong winds descending from Mount Yugandhara, they fell to the ground in bewilderment and in a faint. At the place of the alms offering, thousands of pots containing food and hundreds of water pots knocked against one another and were shattered into pieces. Being greatly shaken, frightened, and troubled in mind, they unanimously approached Bodhisatta and said, "Possessor of the 5 eyes, does this incident foretell our fortune or misfortune? A fearful danger has befallen us. May it please the Fortunate One to dispel our fears." Then the Fortunate One replied, "Be free from the fear caused by this earthquake. Be relieved of your worries. There is nothing to be afraid of. I have today made the prophecy to Sumedha, declaring that he will in the future become an omniscient Buddha in the world. He has reflected on the 10 perfections that were fulfilled by former Buddhas. Because of 47 Sumedha's reflections on the 10 perfections, which are essential for his becoming a Buddha. Without leaving out any one of them, the 10,000 world element shook violently. Thus, Bodhisatta explained to the citizens of Ramavati the cause of the great earthquake and assured them of the absence of any danger. Homage to Sumedha. The citizens at once became calm and free from worry on hearing the words of Bodhisatta. In fact, they were filled with great joy, and taking flowers, scents, and other offerings, they marched out of the city and approached Sumedha, honored him with their offerings, and paid respects to him. Then Sumedha, following the usual practice of bodhisattvas, contemplated on the attributes of an awakened one, and with steadfast mind directed towards Bodhisatta, he paid homage to him. Then he stood up from his seat where he had been sitting cross-legged. When Sumedha thus stood up from his seat, both devas and humans did honor to him by showering on him celestial and terrestrial flowers that they had brought with them. And they spoke auspicious words of praise and encouragement. BV 179-187. You, noble recluse, have aspired for the noble prize of Buddhahood. May your wish be fulfilled. May all dangers and obstacles which lie in store for you remove themselves and never come to pass. May all worries and ailments vanish, and may you never encounter them. May no harm befall you. May you speedily attain the knowledge of the paths, fruitions, and omniscience. Great hero, as trees bloom in their right season in the world, so may you bring forth the fourfold valorous wisdom, Katu Vezaraja with Mekrane, the sixfold unique wisdom, Cha Asdra with Mekrane, and the 10 powers, Dasa Bala with Mekrane, etc., which are the fruitful possessions of all Buddhas. O great hero, do fulfill the 10 perfections as all Buddhas have done. May you be able to do so. O great hero, as all Buddhas have penetrated the 4 noble truths at the foot of the Bodhi tree, so may you become a Buddha after penetrating the 4 noble truths at the foot of the Bodhi tree, the site of victory. O great hero, as all Buddhas have turned the Dhamma wheel by delivering the first discourse, so may you be able to turn the Dhamma wheel by delivering the first discourse. As the moon shines free from the 5 blemishes of mist, fog, cloud, asarinda, and smoke on a full moon day, so may you appear resplendent in the 10,000 world element with your heart's desire fulfilled. As the sun, liberated from the mouth of asarinda, shines radiant with its own light, so may you shine bright with the glory of a Buddha after your liberation from all the existences. As all rivers flow and are gathered into the great ocean, so may all devas and humans congregate in your presence. In this manner, devas and humans proclaimed his glory and offered auspicious words of prayer. Then Sumedha, who had thus been offered resounding words of encouragement, complete with good wishes and admiration, entered a great forest in the Himalayas, being determined to practice and fulfill the 10 perfections. We therefore move now to Chapter 9, the Chronicle of the 24 Buddhas, which continues the story.